Not the people who are expressing outrage about it. You know, Chuck Lessin, who's the president of Knesset Beth Israel Synagogue, he was in Israel. We talked to him a couple of times after October 7th. He went over to bear testimony personally to what happened. He's back in Richmond. And Chuck, you heard what I think, but tell me your reaction to what has happened with poor Hirsch and his poor family, the public reaction, and Prime Minister Netanyahu. I don't see him as the bad guy here. Good morning.
Good morning to you, John. And of course, I could not agree more. First, let me express once again my condolences to the Hirsch Goldberg Poland family. As you mentioned, Hirsch went to elementary school at our local Jewish day school, the Rutland Torah Academy. The family belonged to our synagogue, Knesset Beth Israel. Just a lovely, beautiful family who made Aliyah, who emigrated to Israel. And as you articulated, he was executed along with 5 other Jewish people in the tunnels. And I don't know, the sadness is profound, but I think that the sadness is beginning to turn into a call for action. I spoke to friends a couple of nights ago, and I recall the late 1980s when Jews all over the world called for the release of Soviet Jewry who were oppressed in the former Soviet Union.
Oh, that's right. I remember that.
That's right. And you remember, of course, the great Reagan speech, Tear Down This Wall. Well, with a lot of marching and a lot of interviews and a lot of talking, we were effective. I think that is where we have to be right now as a Jewish people and as all the friends of the Jewish people and the Jewish nation. We need to tell our story. You mentioned Prime Minister Netanyahu. In my opinion, he is a modern-day Winston Churchill. And what do the Democrats and the progressives and campus protesters and the U.S. media, what do? They criticize him, which, of course, lends credence to Hamas and their leadership. And what are they doing? They're vocally supporting Hamas, an internationally acknowledged terrorist group who openly declare that they will kill Israeli civilians again and again. This is the goal of Hamas. It's their pledge to the world. How does any sane person support such depravity and barbarism? It's beyond me. But until we get out there and tell that story, the truth about modern-day Israel and the truth about who Hamas really is, we're going to have to live this again.
I don't know if you picked up the Richmond Times-Dispatch today, and I'm not trying to single out a student here, so I'm not going to mention this young man's name because I don't want any harm to come to him. He's he's identified as a Jewish fourth-year student at VCU, and he's included in the article about the pro-Palestinian, dare I say pro-Hamas marches and rallies that are still going on at VCU or have come back this fall at VCU. And he says, as a Jewish person, this is the quote in the paper, as a Jewish person, I feel responsibility to take part in this, even more so than other movements, because I feel like I want to show there is a real Jewish opposition to what's going on in Palestine. The feeling is real. People need to challenge themselves to get out of their comfort zone a little bit. I am all for having respectful dialogue. So the fact that he's talking, I can handle. But I got to ask you, Chuck, what is it? And Jeff Katz and I have talked about this off the air some. And what is it with this division within the Jewish community where there's some sort of, I don't know, sympathy for people who are committing atrocities? It's not just a disagreement anymore. It's committing atrocities towards civilians, innocent people. I don't understand why there's that division that seems to be profound within the Jewish community, or am I misreading it?
I don't think you're misreading it. I do think that it is becoming less and less as time moves forward. You're going to see that in the upcoming American election. But I do think that it is a tremendous misreading of what is happening right now. There is a certain level of ignorance. But I will also tell you that the Jewish people throughout our history have always been a tender and loving people who have attempted, according to God's will for us, to be the light unto the nations. And to do that, you have to live a peaceful and loving and kind life. Now, that's the goal. Not all of us reach our goals, but that certainly should be the goal. So you have a contingency within the Jewish people who feel that they're pacifist and feel like there should just be no war. But the truth is, in our history, we've always had to defend ourselves and fight wars. We've done it to defend ourselves and to defend our land. When we did not put up tremendous resistance, we have been crushed, and as we saw that in the Holocaust. It is our mission now to stand up and fight. He is certainly entitled to his opinion, and no Jew wishes the Palestinian people bad. Nobody does. No Jewish person I know. But on the other hand, their leadership is driving them into the ground, and why would we be defending that? Yeah. Nobody wants to see them hurt. In fact, they've got the prime real estate. They're right on the Mediterranean. They could have a thriving, beautiful piece of land and nation of their own, and they just won't do it because they continually call for our destruction. They won't let it happen. Yeah. If they would lay their arms down from us right now, John, the war would be over. Yeah. It would be over.
Yeah, it's a religious war, so it's more than just practical, and I don't know how you deal with that. And it's when I lived in the Middle East, there were several people who I found out were Palestinian, and I liked them very much. I had dinners with them, went jogging with them. I mean, we had I thought a nice relationship, but man, the second Israel came up, it was like I was talking to a different person, and that's what's puzzling to me. Another thing that's puzzling is that the Palestinians who are getting their butts kicked right now with, and I hate to say it, I think if you're going to pick a war with somebody, you should be prepared for what's coming from that. Right. They don't seem to be backing off either. And I don't, I'm not over there, so I'm not talking to people, but what we were being fed from the region is that the Palestinians are still on board with the Hamas leadership, and that's puzzling to me. If it's such an atrocity, if you're so upset, wouldn't you say, hey, man, maybe we're being led by the wrong people? We could get out of this and live peaceful lives if we would just change leadership, but they don't seem to want to do that.
No, they don't. And I think if you look at their textbooks, they deny there's no map of Israel on the in their textbooks, and they deny the existence of the Holocaust ever happening. And we have to get out and just tell the story and tell the truth. What's fascinating to me is, have you ever heard anybody deny the sanctity of the Kaaba in Mecca in Saudi Arabia? It's the holiest site for almost 2 billion Muslims in the world. Mm-hmm. Nobody denies their holy sites, and nor should they. Right. Have you ever heard anybody deny the sanctity of the Vatican? There's 2.4 billion Christians in the world. Of course not. But yet they have this campaign, and it really comes from many predominantly Muslim countries that deny the Jewish right to Israel as a nation state, that deny that our holy sites are there, or that they're our holy sites. They claim they're really their holy sites. Yeah. So we have a lot of work to do, but I am convinced that it can be done. We're just going to have to get out there and start telling the story.
Some objective education, and I'm running long here, but I feel like I need to ask you this last 30 seconds, which isn't fair. Do you feel safe in Richmond when you see this article about the protests at VCU and some of the other things that have happened? Do you feel safe in our own hometown?
I will say this, that I have lived here my entire life, and I have always felt safe until this October 7th incident. Seeing what's happening at my own places, like at UVA where I matriculated. Yeah. No, I do not feel safe the way I used to feel safe walking around with a yarmulke. People never commented about people wearing a yarmulke, and now you get it all the time. Yeah. It's disheartening. It really is.
We got to pay attention to that. I'm sorry that that's the case. I feel sick about that. Chuck Lessin, the president of the Knesset Beth Israel Synagogue. I appreciate you joining us when you were in Israel and back home now. Thanks, Chuck.
Thanks, John.
We're back with more in a moment on News Radio WRVA.